Are you doing okay? Most of the time when we hear that question, we answer before we even think. We say, yeah, I'm good, or I'm fine, or doing all right. Sometimes we are, but sometimes we say it because we don't have the energy to explain the truth. Sometimes we say it because we know the person asking is just being polite. And sometimes we say it because if we told the truth, we might not be able to keep ourselves together. Because the real answer might not be, yeah, I'm doing great. It might be, no, not really. The answer might be, I'm tired. It might be I'm worried about my family. It might be I'm trying to trust God, but I feel like I'm barely hanging on. Or it might be I believe in Jesus, but I still feel overwhelmed. And I think we need to be honest about that. Too many people are walking around with a smile on their face and a storm in their chest. They show up, they go to work, they answer messages, they take care of their kids. They say the right things, but inside, they're asking questions nobody hears. Questions like, God, do you even see me? God, are you still with me? God, why does this feel so heavy? And here's what I want you to know: Jesus is not bothered by your honesty. And that may sound simple, but I want to tell you, it's a big deal. Because a lot of people think they have to clean themselves up emotionally before they come to God. They think they have to sound strong. They have to have the right prayers, and those prayers have to sound impressive. They think faith means pretending nothing hurts. But that's not what we see when we look at Jesus. When Jesus walked through this world, he did not only spend time with people who had everything figured out, he spent time with people who were exhausted, ashamed, sick, afraid, lonely, confused, and broken. He sat with people others avoided. He touched people others would not touch. He listened to people others had already judged. He stopped for people the crowd was willing to ignore. And that tells us something beautiful about his heart. Jesus was never too holy to come close to hurting people. He was holy, and that holiness came near. It did not push people away, it reached for them. I want you to think about the woman at the well. She did not come to the well expecting a life changing conversation. She was just doing what she had probably done many times before: carrying water, carrying shame, carrying the weight of her story. You know, People knew about her, people had opinions about her, and maybe she had learned to live with being misunderstood. I think many of us do. Then Jesus met her there. He did not pretend he did not know her life. He already did before he even showed up. He knew the truth, and he still spoke to her. He still offered her living water, and he treated her like someone worth saving. I want to tell you something that most people overlook in that story. When Jesus was done telling the woman at the well her life story and offering her living water, she said, with excitement, by the way, I'm going to be going back to my town. In fact, she was going to run back to her town and tell everyone about him and what he did and how he knew everything about her. Now, you see, something happened there at that well that I think everyone overlooks. She had just self ordained as the very first preacher recorded in the New Testament. She's the very first Christian preacher. Hear that again. The very first preacher in recorded history for Christianity was a woman. She went back to her town and she preached about Jesus. I call it preaching. You can also call it telling. So she went back and told the story. But she said she was going to tell everyone. So to me, that makes her the first preacher recorded in the New Testament, because that happened before Jesus sent his disciples out onto the world to make disciples of others. She preached the word of the Lord in a Samaritan town. And I think that's amazing. I also think it's something that man-made religion actually overlooks, because notice I said man-made religion. The majority of the religious perspectives that we observe were created by men, and men tend to overlook the achievements and accomplishments of extraordinary women. But think about that. Think about who Jesus chose to be the very first preacher. It wasn't some perfect guy who had the right robes on and all the right words and demanded authority. It was a broken woman at a well who needed a hand up, not a handout. And that's interesting. Jesus does pick people. And it's really, I look back and I think, wow, God always seems to pick the people that you would never expect. And we wouldn't expect this woman to be the first preacher, so we overlook that aspect of the story. But it's right there in front of your eyes, like so many other magical moments with Christ. And I love that story. And I love pointing out to people, hey, you may have missed this, and maybe you didn't. But you know what? For the person who just heard that for the very first time and just realized that God doesn't always pick the perfect people, and God doesn't always do things in the way that men tell us God does, because God doesn't need a man to use his hands to do this, that, and the other thing to forgive your sins. You can just go directly to God. And I think it's interesting, we always look to men for direction, for the way that God functions and works. I'm going to tell you right now, it's a mystery, and he works in amazing ways. I hope you get something out of that story, and when you hear it in the future, I hope you remember that that is Jesus. And remember that he does not need you to hide the truth from him. He already knows it, and he still wants you. That should bring peace to somebody today, because maybe you've been carrying something that you don't know how to say out loud. Maybe you're embarrassed that you're still struggling. Maybe you keep thinking, I should be past this by now. Maybe you feel like you should be stronger, calmer, more faithful, or more certain. But Jesus is not standing over you with his arms crossed, disappointed that you're a human. He may have an amazing plan for you, an amazing title. He may have something for you that you'll be recorded for in history forever. And it wasn't because you were the perfect human. It was just because you were human. And because you're weak. And because sin breaks us, grief shakes us, fear wears us down, and life can become too heavy for human strength. That's why the invitation of Jesus matters so much. Sorry if I've been rambling a little bit here. I'm just so blown away by that story, and it kind of carries me off sometimes. But you know what? I want you to remember something. Jesus said, come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. He didn't say, come to me when you're impressive or when you have enough followers on social media. He didn't say, come to me after you stop struggling. That's the point of Christ. He wants to help you stop struggling. He didn't say, come to me when your life looks clean enough for everybody else. He just said, come to me. And that's the invitation. No matter what you're going through, no matter who you are, no matter what you believe, no matter what your past is, It doesn't matter. You see, that's the lesson hidden inside the question, are you doing okay? Because maybe the question is just not about how your day is going. Maybe it's a doorway. Maybe it's a chance to finally stop pretending in the presence of the one who already knows. You can tell Jesus the truth. You can tell him, Lord, I am scared. You can tell him, I don't know what to do next. He hears that from me all the time. You could tell him I'm angry and I don't want to be. I love you, but I am tired. I believe, but help my unbelief. That kind of prayer may not sound like some polished prayer from a book, but you know what? It's real. And real prayer reaches heaven. You know, it always makes me think about Peter. Peter loved Jesus, and there's no question about that. But Peter also failed. When the pressure came, when fear took over, when the moment got dangerous, Peter denied him 3 times. Now, can you imagine how Peter felt after that? I always think about that. Imagine being Peter and putting yourself in a situation like that. I mean, he had said he would never fall away. He had said he would die with Jesus. But he didn't say that to a crowd. He said that to Jesus himself. And then, when it mattered most, he broke. You know, I think a lot of us know what it feels like in our own way, don't we? We know what that feels like. Maybe not the same situation, but we know what it feels like to look back and think, why did I do that? You know, we know what it feels like to disappoint ourselves. We know what it feels like to wonder if God is just tired of forgiving us, or if he even will. Sometimes the transgression is at the point where I did that knowing it was wrong. Will God still forgive me? You know what? After the resurrection, Jesus came to Peter on a beach, and he did not come to destroy him. He restored him. That's one of the most beautiful things about Jesus, I think. He tells the truth, but he does not use the truth to crush the person who is coming back to him. He uses the truth to heal. He uses grace to rebuild. And he takes people who think they are finished and shows them that failure does not get the final word when grace is still speaking. Think of the woman at the well. She thought her failures in life had turned her into somebody who had to show up hidden in the heat of the day just to get water. She couldn't show up with the women in the morning because of the ridicule and the looks, etc. But Christ said, are you doing okay? And he was not asking because he thought she had the perfect answer. He was asking because maybe she needed to stop for a moment. You know, kind of like us. Maybe we need to stop. Maybe we just need to breathe. Maybe we need to let our souls catch up with our life. Maybe we get moving so fast, we handle so much, and are trying to be strong for so many people that we have not been honest with God about this season and how it's affecting us. And I want to remind you that Jesus sees you. He sees the part of you that keeps going even when you're worn out. He sees the prayers you prayed when nobody else was in the room. He sees the tears you wiped away before anyone walked in. He sees the pressure you do not talk about. He sees the good you're trying to do, even when you feel like you're falling short. And he is not far away. That is the comfort of our faith. We do not serve a Savior who only understands pain from a distance. Because Jesus entered this world, he knew hunger, he knew rejection, he knew betrayal, he knew grief. He stood outside the tomb of Lazarus and wept. And that means your tears are not strange to him. Your heaviness is not a confusing aspect of you. Your weakness does not scare him away. So maybe today, the most faithful thing you can do is not pretend you're okay. Maybe the most faithful thing you can do is come to Jesus honestly. Sit with him for a moment. Not with fancy words or with performance, just the truth. Lord, I need you. That prayer is enough to begin. And no, it doesn't mean every problem disappears the second you pray. Sometimes you still have to walk through the hard thing. Sometimes the answer takes time. And sometimes God gives you strength for one day instead of showing you the whole road ahead. But one day with Jesus is still better than trying to survive alone. One step with Jesus is still enough for the next step. And one honest prayer can be the beginning of peace returning to your soul. So let me ask you again gently, are you doing okay? And before you rush past the question, I want you to take it seriously. Not so you can fall apart without hope, but so you can bring truth to the one who loves you. Bring him the worry. Bring him the guilt. Bring him the disappointment. Bring him the tired version of you. Bring him the part that does not know what to say. Jesus is not waiting for the perfect version of you. He's calling for the real version of you. And the real version of you is loved. The real version of you is seen. The real version of you can be restored. You may not be able to say everything in your life is okay right now, but because of Jesus, you can say this: I am not alone. He sees me. He is with me, and with him, I can keep going. My name is Douglas Vandergraph, and I believe in Jesus Christ. God bless you, my friends. May God bless every single one of you. Bye-bye.